It's just a house. Stop being so dramatic. That single sentence from my mother shattered the illusion of family I had held inside me with a loud crash. Even from far away, it lingered deep in my heart. It was a shock strong enough to instantly render words like warmth and trust meaningless. I'm Selena, 30 years old. After building a career as a nurse, I now volunteer as part of a medical camp in Rwanda, East Africa. The makeshift tents used for treatment become like saunas in the heat. And with unstable electricity and poor sanitation, there's a constant tension in providing medical care. Still, I chose this path myself. There's no doubt it's harsh. But not once have I regretted being here or choosing this life. That day, after finishing the morning procedures, I took off my sweat-soaked mask and sipped some water. The cold water seeped into my parched throat. I looked up at the sky. It was endlessly blue, endlessly distant. In that moment of quiet amid the business, what crossed my mind was that house in Ohio. The house Lucas and I had chosen together, even taking part in its design. When I returned home, I was finally supposed to settle down there. But around that time, without my knowledge, something unthinkable had begun. I later heard that one weekend, my sister Mira had come home for the first time in a while. She carried gifts in both hands and apparently wore an oddly modest expression. Hey, Mom, Dad, I have something to discuss. Sitting on the couch, Mira began speaking while fiddling with her phone. It's going to cost way more than I initially calculated. I don't want to compromise on the dress, and I want the food to be something our guests can truly enjoy. I want to focus on the floral arrangements and table settings too. For the honeymoon, we're thinking of Bali, and we still need to furnish the new apartment. All in all, I'm sure it's going to go over $30,000. Silence fell over the living room. My mother and father exchanged a glance for just a moment before my mother spoke. All right, Mira, I understand how you feel. We'll figure something out. Her voice carried a sigh of hesitation, but her words were more than enough to be taken as approval. Thank you. I knew I could count on you. Smiling, Mira stood up and headed toward the entrance, clearly satisfied. After the door closed, my parents silently moved to the kitchen and each took a seat with a glass of chilled iced tea. In the quiet house, their eyes met again. How are we supposed to come up with that kind of money? My father's voice was low. It hinted at many similar conversations they had likely had before. We can sell Selena's house. Hey, are you serious? I'm serious. She went overseas, and we don't even know if she's coming back. The house has been vacant ever since she left for Rwanda. Don't you think it's better to act now? You'd need her signature. What are you planning to do? My mother peeled off an old document that had been stuck to the fridge with a magnet. It was a copy of a mortgage form I had once sent them. It had my handwriting, my signature style, everything was there. If I copy this, it'll look real enough. We scanned her ID too, remember? After a moment of silence, my father muttered, That's completely illegal. I know, but if it's for Mira's wedding, I'll do it. Apparently, that's what my mother said with finality. A few days later, she contacted a familiar real estate agent and lied, saying she had received my verbal consent. She secretly forged the title documents using the home computer and scanner. To the title company representative, she claimed, My daughter is working overseas, and she sent the signed documents via scan. And she and my father mimicked my signature using old paperwork of mine to create the contract. There was no verification by a notary public, and the sale proceeded with the forged signature. The selling price was $400,000. A portion of that money was allocated to fund Mira's wedding, honeymoon, and preparations for her new life. My parents believed they had bought happiness for the family. To them, it might have been a necessary decision or a temporary fix. But to me, it was the moment my life was trampled upon. A few afternoons later, I had just finished seeing patients and was taking a break when I opened my phone. In my inbox was an unfamiliar email. The subject line read, Confirmation regarding your property sale. I didn't recognize the name of the real estate agent. But the moment I read the content, my knees went weak. We are contacting you regarding the sale of your property. Based on the documents submitted, we are proceeding with the final steps of the ownership transfer. However, since the property is jointly owned with Mr. Lucas, we will also require his signature and identification documents. A sale. My house. My vision darkened. I immediately called Lucas, but it was news to him too. As a co-owner, he hadn't been contacted at all. I quickly reached out to the title company representative who had sent the email. Still unsettled, I asked who had submitted the documents. The person on the line hesitated for a moment. After placing me on hold with, "Let me check," they returned with a clear and firm answer. All the documents were submitted by Mrs. Alicia Bennett and Mr. Victor Bennett. Are they your family members? In that instant, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was my parents, after all. Shaking with anger, I called my mother. "Answer me right now. Did you sell the house? It was for Mira's wedding. You wouldn't help, so we had no choice. You forged my signature and sold my house without permission? What were you thinking? We're family, aren't we? Mira is your sister. Since you wouldn't do anything, we stepped in. Could you really watch your sister be humiliated?" Before I could respond, my mother raised her voice. "It's just a house. Stop being so dramatic." At that moment, I heard something crack deep inside my chest. With every heartbeat, it felt like something cold was seeping from that fracture. "Just a house, you say?" I finally spoke. But my voice was shockingly quiet, even to myself. "Do you have any idea what I went through to buy that house? In Rwanda, fighting disease and hunger, still dreaming of the future. I thought I had finally found a place to return to. And you call that just a house? Well, there's no way you'll get away with it. Face reality. Family is about supporting each other. Instead of playing the saint overseas, why don't you care more about the people close to you?" Her words no longer sounded like those of a mother. They sounded like a spell used to crush someone, hiding behind the word family. It was so far removed from the definition of family I had believed in. Quietly, anger welled up from deep within me, and after hanging up the phone, I took a deep breath. My life is not something that can be rewritten for someone else's convenience. I could no longer stand by in silence and let this happen. I decided to confront this injustice for the sake of my own dignity. Then, I immediately called Lucas. After a few rings, I heard his voice. "Selena? Lucas, I'm sorry, but I need to talk to you urgently. Something terrible is happening with the house." Without even pausing to steady my breath, I explained everything. That my parents had forged my signature and were trying to sell the house without permission. That they intended to use the proceeds for Mira's wedding, honeymoon, and new life. After a brief silence, Lucas quietly responded, "It's okay. The title hasn't been officially transferred yet. Your name and mine are both still on it. That means if either of us objects, we should be able to stop the sale. I'll help you." His words gave me the first faint glimmer of hope in my chest. I felt as if I had finally found the first step towards standing back up on my own. The house Lucas and I bought was under both our names. On the title and the contract, there were signature fields clearly labeled for both owners. With only my forged signature, the sale couldn't be finalized. My parents didn't understand that system at all. I immediately contacted the title company and formally declared that I did not consent to the sale and that the signature was forged. I also submitted documents to prove that Lucas had not given his consent. Word of this must have reached my mother somehow. Soon, her phone calls became incessant. Every time I checked my phone during breaks in volunteering, voicemails and messages had piled up. "What have you done? If you hadn't interfered, everything would have gone smoothly. Why would you ruin your sister's once-in-a-lifetime moment?" Every message was one-sided, filled with blame while ignoring my feelings and circumstances. When I didn't respond, I began receiving curt emails from my father as well, saying, "I'm disappointed," and "you let us down." Then I later heard something else, something even more disturbing. A relative quietly confided in me. "Your mother's been telling people that Selena's been emotionally unstable lately and can't make sound decisions." Apparently, the very act of stopping the sale was being framed as erratic behavior. My father didn't deny it either. In fact, he was reportedly saying things like, "Our family's been torn apart because Selena refused to help with Mira's wedding," as if I were the reason the family was falling apart. What shocked me even more was my sister's reaction. Mira began posting on social media, claiming, "My sister hurt me. Wedding to need be my sister. That me happiness was destroyed. Wounded bride." The photos included a face pretending to wipe away tears, a fitting shot in a wedding dress she claimed to have bought herself, and parts of the venue decorations. She must have been fed baseless stories by our parents. Selena was against your wedding from the beginning. She doesn't want you to be happy. Not only did she refuse to help with the expenses, but she tried to destroy the wedding entirely. Mira must have believed those words. She seemed to truly think I didn't bless her marriage and was judging her. Misunderstandings and emotions snowballed, and she began painting herself as the victim in her story on social media. Sympathetic comments poured into her posts, and she looked almost proud of it. But it didn't end there. She also poisoned Jace, her fiancé, and his family against me, saying I was a troublesome sister who tries to control the family and someone who only cares about her own career and looks down on others. As a result, Jace's family became wary, and soon Jace himself grew confused, rapidly straining the relationship between the two families. Then, one night, I received a video call from Lucas. Behind him was the living room of the house. It looked familiar, but also made my chest stir uneasily. Jace and Mira broke off their engagement. He said it so suddenly that I just stared at the screen. Why? I happened to see Mira's social media. She was posting stuff like wedding denied by my sister and wounded bride. It was getting out of hand. So I reached out to Jace through a mutual friend. Lucas and Jace worked in the same industry and had a few mutual friends from before. I told him everything. What was done to you, what happened to the house, and that all the evidence was there. Jace went silent. Then later, he apparently hired a private investigator and looked into it himself. Lucas's voice was calm, but beneath it, I could sense his anger and disbelief. Attempted fraud, forged documents, everything your parents did came to light. Then Jace's mother said, "We can't marry into a family like that," and the engagement was called off. I could only stare at the screen, speechless. Mira had tried to play the victim on social media, only to destroy the illusion she built with her own hands. Yet I felt not an ounce of sympathy. With the engagement broken, Mira lost everything. The already booked venue, catering, floral arrangements, photography, and the honeymoon in Bali were all canceled, and the future she envisioned collapsed with them. Naturally, she had no means to pay the cancellation fees, and invoices from each vendor piled up, eventually going unpaid. Though she had once smiled brightly on social media, her posts gradually decreased until she finally left one brief message. I apologized for the trouble and made her account private. A few days later, I received an official response from the title company. Since one of the co-owners has submitted a clear statement of non-consent, the sale will be considered invalid. The sale was stopped then and there. The buyer was informed of the situation, and the contract was voided. The $400,000 in proceeds my parents believed they had secured turned out to be nothing but a mirage. Considering how close I came to losing everything, even that was more than enough salvation. But just then, a call came from my parents. My mother shouted on the phone, "We used your name because we had to. We never imagined you'd interfere with the sale, because you had to. So you forged my signature without permission?" I replied calmly, "You're overseas. I didn't think you'd notice the details anyway. So, because I wouldn't notice, you thought anything was okay? Is that how your version of family works?" After a pause, my father muttered in a low voice, "Let's just stop, Alicia. If we go to the police, maybe we can claim there was a valid reason. Justify it?" I forced the words out, holding back my anger. "What you did is fraud, and you did it while pretending to be family. You have no right to rewrite my life." Still, my parents didn't back down. "We were the ones who got tricked," my mother said, and astonishingly filed a false police report. She claimed an imposter using our daughter's name interfered with the sale. When I heard that, I gasped. I couldn't believe my own parents could lie so easily and shamelessly. That's when I made up my mind. I immediately called Lucas. "Selena?" His calm voice came through the receiver. "I need to talk. Please listen now." "Yeah, of course." "What's going on?" "My mother. She reported me to the police, claiming I'm a fraud. She said someone is using Selena's name to interfere with the sale. It's a complete lie. They're trying to frame me to justify what they did." After a few seconds of silence, Lucas spoke quietly. "I can't believe it." "No, I don't want to believe it. But honestly, I'm not even surprised anymore. I can't stay silent any longer. They almost stole my house. They used the word family to manipulate my life however they wanted. And now they're trying to turn me into a criminal." I could hear Lucas's breathing become heavier. Let's take legal action. That one sentence filled my chest with warmth. What? What they did is clearly illegal. Forging signatures, submitting fraudulent documents, and now filing a false police report. This isn't just your issue. They used my name too. This is our fight. Thank you, Lucas. We have the evidence. The documents, the emails, the recorded conversations. Let's go through a proper lawyer and file charges for fraud. Yeah, I was thinking that's the only way too. To be honest, it's been eating at me, watching you go through all this while I just stood by. But you've been so strong. I want to stand with you now. I was speechless. Knowing someone was willing to fight beside me, just that made something deep in my heart feel lighter. That night, I gathered the necessary evidence and, working with Lucas, submitted everything to a lawyer. Proof of the false police report, the forged signatures required for the sale, the procedural violations committed by my parents, and Lucas's testimony. We proceeded cautiously, but deliberately. A few weeks later, my parents were formally charged with attempted fraud, forgery of private documents, abetment of false entries in public documents, and false accusations. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I felt like I had made it to the starting line. That evening, my smartphone vibrated. My mother's name appeared on the display. I had a bad feeling, but I answered the call. Selena, what are you thinking? Suing your own parents? Are you insane? She was yelling right from the start. The one who's sane here is me. What you did was a crime. What crime? You're dragging your parents into court? What kind of heartless person does that? Let me ask you this. If your family forged your name, sold your house, and then accused you of fraud when you tried to stop it, would you stay silent and forgive them? We did it for Mira. Isn't she pitiful? The wedding, the trip, everything's ruined. So you used my life as the price for her pity. Without asking me a single thing, you made every decision on your own. From the other end of the line, my father's heavy voice cut in. You're being too cold. This could have been resolved with a simple conversation. You should think about how this looks to others. If it could have been resolved with a conversation, then why didn't you talk to me from the start? You forged documents, manipulated my life, and you still think that's what a parent should do? My mother burst out in emotion. Ungrateful. Who do you think raised you? The only reason you can do whatever you want in Rwanda is because we supported you. I didn't come this far because of your sacrifices. I worked, I studied, I built this life with my own hands. You have no right to claim you supported me. If this goes to court, that's the end of our relationship. Are you really willing to go that far? Yes, I'm fine with that. I could sense my mother was speechless. I've been bound by the word family all my life, but not anymore. Even if family has no right to trample on someone's life, I will protect my name and my life. Then do as you wish. Her voice was faint. I didn't raise a daughter like you. That goes both ways. Click. The call ended. I gently placed the phone on the table. My hands were shaking, but deep inside, I felt calm. For the first time, I was truly ready to take back my life. Next, I would head to the courthouse. Even if the opponent was my own parents, there are lines that should never be crossed. I was prepared to prove that in a court of law, but I couldn't head to trial right away. I was still on the ground in Rwanda, working at a medical camp that helped preserve lives. Each day, I looked into the eyes of patients and did all I could to treat them. That work kept me from being overwhelmed by my emotions. At night, under the starry sky, my thoughts drifted to the upcoming trial. Sometimes I asked myself, was this really the right thing to do? But what always came back to me were the words my mother said during that call. Ungrateful. I didn't raise you. You're not family. I no longer needed to be bound by people who said those things. Months later, the volunteer mission came to an end safely. On the plane ride home, I quietly closed my eyes. As I recalled the African sunset beyond the horizon, I told myself, it's going to be okay now. The day I returned to the U.S. was a chilly autumn morning. As I stepped out of the airport, a damp wind brushed my cheek, and reality rushed in. But I had no intention of running from anything anymore. A few days after arriving, I went to the courthouse with my lawyer. I took a deep breath in front of the building. I finally made it here. My parents had not yet appeared, but I knew I would face them in court soon enough. Still, I wouldn't just end this story as a victim. To protect my name and my life, and to ensure no one ever tramples on them again, I would fight. I stood in court. As I took the witness stand, the air in the courtroom grew heavy. Ahead of me were the judge and the jury. To my right sat the lawyer. To my left were my parents, heads bowed. I looked straight ahead and began to testify. I don't hate my parents, but what they did is clearly a crime. They forged my signature, attempted to sell property without my consent, and then tried to frame me to cover up their wrongdoing. Silence followed. I continued speaking. Just because we're a family doesn't mean anything goes. I'm standing here to protect my name and my life. The evidence submitted was thorough. Handwriting analysis results, contracts forged in my name, legal documents, emails, and records of the false report to the police. Each piece spoke to the gravity of my parents' actions. Prompted by her lawyer, Alicia Bennett took the stand. Selena was always independent, never caused trouble. That's why I thought, just this once, it would be okay. I didn't want to ruin Mira's wedding. And the false report about someone impersonating your daughter to interfere with the sale? The judge asked. Alicia hesitated for a moment, then gave a feeble nod. Victor Bennett also spoke, his voice trembling. We realized partway through that we'd gone too far. But we felt there was no turning back. The prosecutor raised his voice. This is not merely a parental mistake. It was a premeditated fraud, a malicious false report, and a crime that trampled the victim's life. The trial spanned several months, with all testimony and evidence laid out. Then came the day of the verdict. I sat quietly on the wooden bench of the courtroom. The defendants, Alicia Bennett and Victor Bennett. You are charged with attempted fraud, forgery of private documents, abetment of false entries in public records, and filing a false accusation. This court recognizes all charges and determines that you bear significant social responsibility. Therefore, the court sentences both defendants to 1 year and 6 months of imprisonment. The courtroom fell silent. My mother broke down in tears, while my father stood frozen. I simply watched them in silence. There was a stir in my heart, but it wasn't guilt. It's finally over. That quiet realization spread through my chest. As I left the courtroom, I took a deep breath. Now, at last, I was truly free. No one could control me anymore. A few days after the sentence was handed down, I received a message from Mira. We met again at a small cafe we used to visit with our family when we were kids. She looked slightly nervous, but sat across from me and spoke directly. I'm really sorry. I didn't know anything. When I told them about the wedding, you just smiled and said not to worry. I had no idea they were trying to sell your house. I slowly nodded. If you understand now, that's enough. Back then, you probably thought you were being protected. I didn't explain things to you properly either. Even so, it was wrong of me to post those things about you on social media. I'm sorry. Mira apologized in her own words and said she wanted to walk her own path now. Looking at her, I saw something that reminded me of my past self. It's okay now, Mira. Live your life. I'll live mine. After that, Mira stopped relying on our parents and began looking for a job. Seeing her try to be independent on her own made me somewhat happy. My life, too, slowly regained its calm, and at last, the word normal started to feel right again. One day, a letter arrived from my lawyer. The sender was my mother, from the detention facility. Dear Selena, the opening of the letter was unlike anything I had ever received from her before. It began with an apology, sincere, awkward, but genuine. I'm currently attending a program called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy in the facility. I'm spending each day facing the fear and vanity behind my actions, and how much we try to control and dominate you. I don't ask you to forgive me for taking your name and dignity. I just want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. I'm truly sorry. Even after finishing the letter, I couldn't move for a while. There were no tears, just a quiet feeling that something deep inside me was slowly loosening. Later, I received an apology from my father as well. Like my mother, he was also undergoing cognitive behavioral therapy and facing his own weaknesses and the things he had been running from. Both letters consistently conveyed regret and an acknowledgement of their late understanding. I couldn't write a reply right away. The word reconciliation still felt a bit distant. Even so, I was no longer consumed by the anger and hatred I once felt. I believe forgiveness means something different to each person. I haven't completely forgiven my parents, but I've also decided not to live carrying only hatred anymore. It's okay if it takes time. It's okay if things never go back to the way they were. Right now, I'm quietly searching for my answer in the life I walk by my own choice. Lucas and I have started a new life together. The house that was almost taken from us has now truly become our home. In the mornings, I watch Lucas standing in the kitchen as I make coffee. At dusk, we sit wrapped in the breeze coming through the window, reading quietly or sometimes talking about the past. Of course, everything isn't perfect, but I'm no longer bound by the word family. That name, that house, and my future. I took them all back with my own hands. And today, I wrote a reply to my parents. It doesn't mean I've forgiven them. It doesn't mean I've forgotten. But I've decided to stop living in the past. This is my life, my choice, and I'll carve this new step forward in my own words.